this is.
Oh.
This is called up. Is this the same thing? I don't know if somebody emailed it or. Is this
Does it
different?
look like Town of Williston? Oh,
No, that's not.
That's an
Alright,
old one.
okay.
Or that's
We're
the
doing
town's.
CVSD, right?
Yeah,
The whole.
Champlain Valley
All
School
right.
District. Yeah, that's the
That was
town.
called up,
It's
so.
ticked.
Yes, exactly.
It's like, okay, well, let me talk to the town budget.
That'd be fun, huh? Throw you in right there at the wrong budget.
I know nothing about the town budget. The other thing though that's gonna change is, we're talking about budgeting year round, right? We're gonna, so how,
That's my point, is
Yeah.
that, you know, rather than say budget's down for next year, it's like, okay, budget,
This part of the
continues.
budget.
And this is what we're gonna do.
Budget is a year-round
This is
process.
what we're doing in April, and some of it is like reflection.
That looks better,
there we go.
right?
Yeah. Okay.
Why don't you come in the control? Oh, let me check your spin off. Controller.
Oh.
Come on in here.
Okay.
Welcome. It's a 3U with Howard, right?
Yes.
Alex, is there anything you need help with?
Thank you, but no. One thing I'll say about the election of Barack Obama is that may be one of those moments in history that, just like the day of September 11th, everybody just kind of remembers where they were when
Yeah, oh, no question.
Well, I mean, we all knew he was going to get.
Yep. How you
Should be an
doing
easy
today?
one, huh?
I hope so.
Good
I
to
don't
see you
have-
again. I'm Kevin.
Nice to see you again,
I remember you
Kevin.
from last year.
Ah,
And this is the only one we're doing then, right?
Yeah.
right.
Alex is
Josilyn Adams is not coming on 6.
out.
Yep.
This one goes about, how long does it go, Alex? Do you
30
know?
of the minutes.
How many?
30 minutes.
30 minutes, wow. Easy. Easy peasy.
Yeah, I think it's basically just keep the clock ticking each other out. Just been enlisted to join the Vermont International Film Festival's programming committee. So
What is that?
It's super cool. It's basically online screeners now, and so you go to Vimeo or whatever,
Yeah,
and you plug in the password to see the screener, and I can help them select a whole series of films that have had their premieres at international film festivals, like last year's Cannes, and then these films make the rounds at Kid Brother festivals.
So you
like
get to
ours.
help select this,
Yeah,
that's
that'd be fun.
fantastic.
But mostly it's like, you
It's
get
one of
to-
my favorite sites. I go there at least twice a week just to see what's new, so.
It's just nice to be able to
I
watch a
use
bunch
that.
of free, cool movies and
Oh,
stuff.
I use them all the time. I mean, that's where I'm Howard. And basically, hello and good evening. Welcome to Channel 17, Town Meeting TV's continuing coverage of Town Meeting 2018. Tonight, we welcome the Champlain Valley School District and we learn about the budget and ballot items coming before the voters on March 6th. Remember to call in with your questions anytime during this program, and the number is 862-3966. Okay, let me introduce who we have here. In the middle here is Superintendent Elaine Pinckney. We also have Board Chair Jeanne Jensen, correct? And Board Committee Chair Lynne, how do you say your?
Jaunich.
Jounich, right here. And they're joining us this evening to make a presentation about the Champlain Valley School District. I'm going to start with you, Elaine. Let's start with that big picture. What budget and ballot items will voters be asked to consider?
So they're going to be asked to consider a budget of $76,838,041, which is a 2.3% increase over last year's budget. So that met the board's goals. I'm sure Lynne is going to talk a little bit more about that. It met the governor's challenge, and it maintains the programming that we believe we want based on our mission and vision. They'll also be asked to vote to authorize $750,000 of fund balance to use as revenue. They'll be asked to purchase a bus, six buses, excuse me. So now that we're merged, it's merging all the buses, it's a big fleet. And they'll also be asked to allocate the unexpended construction funds from the Shelburne project, which is $819,665 to unmet needs across the district. So those are the
big pictures.
Those are the
Yeah.
big picture ones. This, by the way, is Jeanne Jensen, and she's the Chief Operations Officer.
Chief Operating, I'm sorry,
The
Jeanne.
head
They had
guru
it
for all
wrong.
the budget.
That's fine.
Should've-
She does the numbers.
All right, so you really can tell us what's
Yeah.
going on here. You want to get deeper into the
I'm going to
budget?
turn it over to Lynne, who has been an excellent finance chair, and she's got the details.
Because the big picture, the budget is a big number, but there is a very long process that goes into it. And so we've kind of put together a presentation that goes through how we came up with the budget and kind of some other pieces that were involved in the process. So first of all, this is the first year that we've been operating as a consolidated district. We are we represent 5 towns: Shelburne, Heinsberg, Charlotte, St. George, and Williston. We operate 7 schools. And we serve about 3,800 students. We have one budget for all of those schools. We don't have individual budgets for individual schools that we then just put together. It is one single budget.
This is the first year for that?
We actually crafted a budget so that we could operate this year as a single district. But
Gotcha.
this is the first year that we are one single district.
Right.
I just wanted to point out real quick, our mission at CVSD drives everything that we do, and was a huge piece of how the board develops its work and how we looked at setting goals for this budget process. I just wanted to thank real quick, we have a lot of people involved in putting together this budget, not only central office input, we do community forums with parents, community members, we did online surveys, other school board members, staff, administrators, all help us give input into what they would like to see for the budget. And we have a group of budget buddies from each individual towns who kind of act as our checking point to make sure we're making sense of what we're doing. I think it's really important to know kind of what everyone is getting for their $76 million because it's a huge number. At the end of the day, CVSD is really proud that we have a 98% graduation rate. That's quite exceptional. And the fact that we also have about 84% of our kids go on to do some form of higher education, whether it be a 2-year or 4-year program. Going back to our mission, all those things that we expect for our kids are so involved in the communities. You can see they've got Youth Hero Awards from COTS. We have teachers that are winning national awards and getting national recognition. CVU has always raised, I don't know if they raised the most this year, money for Special Olympics. It's not just reading, writing, and arithmetic is what makes a graduate from CVSD. It's a whole person. But we always have to look at how we do academically, and CVSD does really well on our SBAC. You can see in the chart on every measure, CVSD surpasses the state of Vermont. Same with our NECAP scores, which is science. Those are tested in just 3 grades. We also tend to do quite well, proficient and above. So a lot of what drives the budget is what does our enrollment look like? Staffing is 80% of our budget. So what are we looking at in terms of student count and where are we projected to go? And we're pretty lucky in that we're pretty stable. We're not expected to see huge increases or huge decreases. We're projected to be fairly stable for the next few years, which has really helped us with our new budgeting process that we're taking this year.
And just an interesting comment on the enrollment trends by school is this, as a consolidated district, we can take all of the kids, regardless of the town, and add them into our equations for the tax rate. And that makes a big difference because in other years where one town was losing students, they had a tax rate problem and perhaps had to cut services where another town was adding services, and all these kids go to the same high school. So we've really been trying very hard over the last decade to make sure that those kids came to CVU with an equivalent experience, and the ups and downs of enrollment were just a struggle for us. So now, while Elaine with the educational team makes decisions about class sizes and staffing at different ones, we can offer the same program across all of it with one single budget.
And what are enrollment, are they going up now, or?
Well, some of our towns are going up a little, some of our towns are going down a little. Sometimes it's just one class that happens to be big or small. But across the board, when you add them all together, they tend to be very stable.
Yeah, good.
Our class sizes, one of the pieces that the board looks at are our educational quality standards, and that middle section are the Vermont quality standards for class sizes, and basically K through 3 you want classes on average among all those ranges below 20, and in the upper grades below 25 students, and all of our kids, or all of our classes are within the educational quality standards. So because we're now consolidated and we're looking at 7 different schools, it would be really hard for a board of 12 people to budget like we used to budget, where we used to delve into the details of individual classrooms and individual programs and really get into the nitty-gritty. There's just no way that we could do that. So we kind of took a little bit of a different approach. We looked at what our goals would be. What are we looking to establish within our school system? We also looked at budgeting for more than just 1 year. Now that we're a bigger system and we can absorb the fluxes in population, and actually we can absorb the changes in special education, which a lot of times drove budgets higher. We're looking out 5 years at what we would like our budgets to look like. We tied our budget increases to economic indicators for the first time. So there were a lot of good things that as a board we set, meeting the fiscal objectives that I just kind of put out on our own timeline, but also trying to meet the governor's. He came out in the fall asking us to come in below 2.5% growth equalized per pupil. So that was a challenge to us, and we did meet that goal. We needed to meet the educational objectives and make sure that every school, there was an equity of resources, but that each school could still maintain autonomy. Equity and autonomy is kind of our buzzword. Keep our coordinated systems of care in place, and we needed to make sure that we were providing what the community was expecting us to provide as well. So you can see some of those objectives that we tried to meet.
Can I ask a question? Like the economic indicators, is there one example of how you use that to project out?
Sure. So the 2.3, I think when we started, we presented the board with several economic indicators to kind of pick from. There was the New England, the NEEP, New England Education something, the NEEP, and that was projecting school funding to increase 3.3%. There's the CPI. What we started with this year was we took an average of those two, and our goal over 5 years is to get us to where the CPI is.
Nice.
I think it's important to mention that when the board was making that decision, that Jeanne had provided them with the modeling of, if you choose this one, this is what it looks like. And if you add this much fund balance each year, so that it was really a thoughtful discussion around what's the target going to be. But the data really helped.
Yeah.
The budget, it would be nice to say that we had local control, but we don't. We have limited local control, especially this year. There are some external pieces, and I'm sure everyone's heard about them. The hole left from last year's use of the reserves in the education fund. We needed to, those monies have to be filled back up. We had the second year of our health insurance recapture that we had to pay back or take into account. Our healthcare costs went up 10% this year. We don't have a lot of control over that piece. We have, as everyone in the state has, an increased number of students who are dealing with opioid, not students dealing specifically, but part of that whole opioid crisis that are coming to school with some pretty significant needs that we haven't had to traditionally address in the past, but it's now coming in. No one is immune from it. And then we have state mandates, proficiency-based learning, personalized learning plans, which we all believe is a very good thing, and we want to support, but we have to support those.
Maybe Elaine, you could talk about that trauma children at this point. It's becoming a bigger and bigger problem with our budget, and
So 80% is already to staff, so you're squeezing help for these.
Yeah, so one of the things that we've been doing, especially this year, last year we really focused on the equity autonomy piece, the class size, and this year, within that there are lots of elements. This year we picked out that element that's the framework for interventions and worked with each of the principal groups separately and then collectively, and then kept bringing that back to the board to develop a plan that identified, like, here's what a good system would look like. This is what the resources would look like for academic interventions, for social emotional learning, in terms of leadership, and in terms of actual direct services to kids. So we're hopeful that by doing that and being really systematic about it, that will make a difference. But there's no doubt that we have many, many more kids who are coming to school. The families are challenged economically and lots of other ways, and that's not lost on the kids, right? So we have to be there to, provide the supports.
I would just want to remind people, viewers, if you are like to call in a question, our number is 862-3966, and we welcome you to call anytime.
For just a few other internal cost pressures, we have our negotiated treatment agreement with our teachers that we needed to incorporate. And we also have some long-term debt associated with building projects in Williston and Shelburne that we had to take the first year of those payments. And those were pretty significant, you'll see later on, driving factors. And then I think our community has pretty high expectations from CVSD. So as you can see, what our proposed budget is for 4127 equalized pupils, which actually went up from last year, is a little shy of $77 million. Our cost per equalized pupil is raised 2.3% from last year under the budget, the governor's proposal or challenge. We're below the state penalty, and we are right kind of in the middle on statewide spending for equalized pupils. You can see underneath that kind of the big picture of where the money in the budget increase is coming from. I need to put a plug in for consolidation because we have saved, as you can see, $214,000 from consolidation. Wow. But as we were talking about, it has allowed us to do things differently, more efficiently. It's a better process, I think, for making decisions. But you can see with our whole budget, it's a 2.3% increase. Half of that increase is the long-term debt service associated with our construction projects. Otherwise, we're at about 1.2% increase. This is the tax calculation that should come with a little star, because when we did our budget back in January, we were working under what we've always worked under in terms of how taxes are calculated. That's a big question mark right now, but we're going with what we developed the system under. Because there is some of the external factors that I talked about that we don't have control over, our tax rate for this year, even with the Act 46 incentive, is $1.52, which is, I think it's the next slide that talks, which is
10 cents.
10 cents higher than it was last year. Of that 10 cents, though, our budget contributes only 3 cents of that 10 cents. And I just think that's, even if we had come in at a flat budget, we still were going to have a tax increase because of those other pieces. And the other piece, I think it's on the next sheet too, the CLA, where you live in our district does play a role in the taxes you pay because the CLA is different in each town. So we're looking at anywhere between a 7% increase and a potentially 12%, it's being appealed, increase in taxes from last year.
Depending on the town.
Depending on the town. Yep.
And one thing on the statewide yield calculation on the 5 cents, the last week we heard that they've taken the first pass of budgets as we've passed them to the state, and they've rolled it up, and it's coming in significantly less than they had forecasted when they developed the statewide yield. So right now we're hoping to hear more officially that it's going to come down by 2 cents. So that would be a big help for us. But when you're looking at a 10-cent increase and 5 cents coming from the state, that kind of puts the school boards in real bind.
Right. When do you know when that will finally? I know that's always.
Well, I asked that question, and the answer I got was, we don't even know how we're going to be funding education at all, let alone which equation we're using, let alone the value of the numbers in the equation. So.
We had a legislative breakfast this morning with our legislators, and it's not lost on them the bind that school boards are in this year because of the yield. And here's the sheet that kind of shows the difference in tax impact depending on what town you live in, and it's tied to the CLA. And under the formula we currently are in, there is income sensitivity as well right now, which is not CLA dependent. So, and those are the articles that Elaine talked about before.
The one interesting, well, the two interesting ones. One is the bus article, that we have quite a few buses because under consolidation that we did have one town that had a separate contracted budget, a bus transportation system, and so we're going to pull it all in-house. Hopefully we'll save some money doing that. So that's we're going to have a few extra buses for picking up the kids in Charlotte next year. So that's besides just keeping our fleet at a reasonable age of buses.
So the new buses are basically, some are being replaced and some are being added just because of the need and that type of thing.
Right.
Or,
so we usually try to replace about five a year just to keep the fleet at a reasonable. You don't want your buses breaking down, so you have to be reasonable. I think it's it's 8-year average age. So that means some buses are 15 years old. So that's sort of our normal replacement cycle, and then we're adding. We take a little risk on that and adding 2 for the Charlotte transportation and spreading things around. So this would be a interesting one. And the other one is this construction bond fund that the folks in Shelburne, who had about a $10 million bond project that they wrapped up, and they actually did such an outstanding job managing the finances, they have some money left over. And under state law, we have to go back and ask the voters to use it somewhere else. So a big chunk of that's going to be used in a project that Shelburne had to take off in order to get their bond passed. But the rest of it is our first attempt to put together one big project to take care of all of our buildings collectively, as opposed to each individual school taking care of each individual building. So. Interesting.
That's a really interesting idea, that you can take a look at the full district now and its physical plant needs, and then say we can really take an assessment now and say we need money over here and here and here. That's interesting.
And do all the sidewalks across all all the buildings, or all the there's different things you can do, roofs, things like that. You can contract larger projects and hopefully get some consolidation money.
And one of the pieces that the Finance Committee did as part of the budget process when we talked about operations and maintenance was looking at all the school and their needs and kind of prioritizing them, and again looking out 5 years, getting a long-term capital budget that we're so we can plan for it. And when you put that together with our budget outlook, it just ties things together, so you're not getting these hopefully huge surprises.
Nice. And have you seen a change in the program options because you're now consolidated as well from an educational program?
What I can say about that, it's not that we've added programs, but for instance, once a month all of the administrators in Chittenden South or Champlain Valley School District get together for the day, and today 2 of the teachers from CVU came and presented some work that they're doing. that causes everyone to start thinking about, like, well, we could do some of that. What would that look like in a middle school? So there's a whole lot more of that going on because there's not competition as much for the resources anymore. So I definitely see that. We haven't increased programming, but we really are looking at, given the support that we have for our schools, is there a better way of doing some of this work? How can we realize what our vision is for making sure that kids leave us ready to, take on the world? So.
I think that was the whole idea behind consolidation, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So looking at it now, what's your judgment on consolidation?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It just made sense. We were already doing so much as a Chittenden South Supervisory Union.
And you had a high school that was already
Right.
consolidating these towns.
Right.
Exactly.
So now it was an easy jump down to say, let's put this all together. That's fascinating. We still have time left to discuss anything you want, but I want to ask if there's viewers who'd like to call in. 862-3966 is our number, and you're welcome to call anytime. If people have questions about the budget, for example, your little flyer here, is that something that's going to be mailed out, or can people pick it up somewhere? Is there a place online where they can get information?
All of the above.
All of the above.
All of the above. And
I believe it's being mailed in the local papers, all of the local
Yes.
papers, either the last week or the week before the vote. We have budget presentations in every single town, sometimes multiple presentations. We're speaking to the Rotary on Wednesday morning in Shelburne and Charlotte and Heinsberg. We're meeting at senior centers, select boards. We're going before our towns on town meeting day. Our website, cvsdvt.org/budget. Not only has all of this information, which is also available in schools, it has all of our budget meetings, and they're all videoed.
All the notes, all the presentations.
It's all there. So if people want to get deeper into the numbers and why we made decisions that we did, it's all there.
yeah, I'm curious about that. And in your district, it's not done at a town meeting. This vote is done just by Australian, right? So, and they just go to their local town and vote on those things on March 6th. So,
One interesting thing is that it's voted on in 5 different towns, but we commingle the ballots. So
what do you mean by that?
So what it means is that the Justice of the Peace, the election officials, will bring the ballots from the local towns. They bring them to CVU, and the Justice of the Peace organization there they physically mix them up. Big table, put them all in, they mix them all up, and then they count
through
them.
the machines. Yeah.
Okay.
So we don't get to say, this town voted yes or no. It's just the entire community votes together.
Right. And that's how CVU votes were always commingled.
Oh, they were? Okay.
Right. So
Yeah.
it's not a new thing. It's different from the way it had been in the past, but the notion of this, the concept, is not foreign.
Yeah, right. That's fascinating. Well, as someone whose both daughters went to CVU, I know, but that was a long time ago. So, but they're doing very well, and it's exciting to hear about this consolidation thing. And for those that have been skeptical about it, what would you say to those people that say, we were skeptical at first too, but this is what's happened?
I think from a board perspective, I heard a lot from my town that our voice was going to be lost. And I think what's really important to remember is, as we said at the beginning, our kids all end up at CVU. They're all our kids. And so our board, I think, works very well together to not say, well, I need this for my town, or I need it. They're all our kids. And I think that has been a pleasant surprise, how easy that transition for the most part has been, how we've all kind of coalesced around, these are all of our kids, and we're looking big picture about what's the best outcome for
And when
them.
you hear about the governor's no new taxes things, how do you react to something like that?
We're just a little puzzled. We don't know how it's going to play out.
Yeah.
You can't wish away a $50 million deficit which is what the state has to deal with, and let alone the individual towns. And we're just, I think our board did a really outstanding job with a very fiscally conservative budget, and just to have it sort of up in the air because of politics is really hard on them.
Well, we've got about 3 minutes left, really about 2.5 minutes. Can someone volunteer to kind of wrap up why people should get out there and vote here on March 6th?
I think as a board member, this budget represents the type of education that people in the CVSD towns are used to receiving in terms of educational quality and programming. It allows us to continue to do the good work, and as we heard this morning from our legislators, our district is well ahead of the curve in terms of a lot of what we're doing for our kids, and what's more important than an educated society.
Yeah.
So get out and vote.
Anyone else?
I think that sums it up nicely.
Yeah. Well, I think this is what democracy is all about anyway, and you know, it's getting out there to vote. And I appreciate the fact that board members will often be the person that can help us, you know, to understand that. And I appreciate, as a former administrator myself, some of these things that you guys go through, and I certainly hope that everyone gets out there and votes on March 6th. I think we can probably wrap this up. I want to just say thanks for joining us for Channel 17's Town Meeting TV's continuing coverage of Town Meeting 2018. Stay tuned for more candidate interviews and debates, and don't forget to vote on March 6th. Thank you very much.